Rewind-A-Dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly as we hear from John and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show. And if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
And hello, everybody. Welcome to a brand new year here at Post Wrestling. Wai Ting joins me, and for 2025, I have realized that it has become a little cumbersome for these introductions at the beginning of each show. So this year, I am just going to refer to myself as Paul.
Paul. Well, nice to meet
P-O-L.
you.
I want to cut down part of my last name to make it easier.
Nice to meet you, Paul. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm just going to be...
Tin.
T.
T. Okay. How
Sure.
are you, Wai?
I'm doing fine, yeah. Welcome to a new era, John.
Is it a new era? Yes.
That's what I've heard.
A number changed, and here we are, a brand new year. Did you have any New Year's Eve festivities?
I guess I was more so speaking about like the wrestling shows now
Oh.
being on streaming.
Huge new era. Yeah, life-changing.
Yeah,
I watched
guess,
it the same way I did last week, so I can't really speak.
Yeah, I guess for many of us, we've already sort of partially converted to like online watching anyway.
This is more a new era in the U.S. for AEW viewers, more so than us.
Yeah, and I would actually venture to think most people who typically watch AEW are probably still watching on TBS anyway. Maybe the era is a maybe slow transition for most, but anyway, I'm curious to hear people's experiences with Max tonight.
I am too. I heard like one of the main changes I heard, or differences I should say, is that on the Max version, you don't get the picture-in-picture during the matches, as opposed to you just get full ads during that. So that was one difference. But
even on non-ad tiers, apparently, people who subscribe to like get Max ad-free still get the full ads.
Well, I would anticipate that you're not going to be ad-free from WWE programming either come Monday. So. Yeah, but I'm curious to hear.
Actually, I believe there's already been reports of like some international markets getting, I believe, SmackDown, or at least, or maybe Monday's Raw. Already.
There
on
were
Netflix.
a few countries that did broadcast Mondays. Yes,
and I think they actually had it ad free.
Well, we will see if that is the case on Monday. That's I will believe it when I see that. We have a lot to tackle. It's been a very newsworthy week. We're going to get everyone up to speed, but first we are going to get you up to speed here at Post Wrestling. We made multiple announcements on the Christmas show, which I want to thank everyone that went through that 8-hour journey. Post Wrestling's answer to the Lord of the Rings. We just gave you the whole trilogy right there. I mean, all together.
Yeah. I hope it was more entertaining than the Lord of the Rings.
We had the
which I don't like at all.
The Fellowship of the Ting. We had the Two Towers, Braden and Davey, and then the Return of the King, Mauro Ranallo, as well on this festive edition of the Christmas show that we have put out. But let's rewind and talk about some of the changes that are going into effect 1 week from today. And Wai, why don't you lead things off of how things are changing for those that are free listeners of the show, as well as Post Wrestling Cafe members.
Yeah. So for free listeners, this, especially those of you watching us on YouTube, unfortunately, this is going to be the last time we're going to be live with you guys on Wednesdays. And that also counts for the Monday after the Netflix debut. So we are now going to be live exclusively for Post Wrestling Cafe patrons. Beyond that, the free editions of the shows will now only contain our reviews of either Raw, Dynamite, or SmackDown going forward. The full editions, which this show will be, and people have been used to getting, including our news of the day discussions, which we typically go about half an hour with every single episode, as well as our feedback feedback and question period at the end of the shows, will now be in an XL edition exclusively for Post Wrestling Cafe patrons as well. So that's really the main change. For those of you who are subscribed to our Patreon, nothing changes for you guys. You continue to get the shows live. You get them as long as we choose to go, and on most days it's probably too long. But those of you
and
guys
unlike Max, they are ad free on the cafe.
That is correct as well. But for much of this decision is, number one, we want to continue giving value to the people that keep this entire production alive, and those are primarily our patrons at postwrestlingcafe.com. Also our YouTube members as well, people who subscribe to it. You'll get all these as well. But also because I think we want to me at least, want to truncate the shows a little bit more for people that just might be discovering us, who don't necessarily want to hear 30 minutes of news discussion before they get to the Dynamite review, for instance. So for those of you guys on the free tier, you will continue to get these, but only the shows themselves. That doesn't mean we won't occasionally, if a big story breaks, start with, or at least include the news discussion as part of the free show. It also doesn't mean that if you subscribe to the YouTube, I won't occasionally clip out our news discussions to put onto our YouTube afterwards. So stay subscribed to the YouTube channel. You'll still get, I'm sure most of what we discuss. But if you want things as they are right now, live and also complete as soon as possible, we encourage you to sign up for the Post Wrestling Cafe.
And we're also doing this limited time offer for January. So if you do, we are now offering annual subscriptions at the Post Wrestling Cafe. So if you sign up this month for an annual subscription, you can get a free month of access to the Post Wrestling Cafe. That's if you sign up this month. This will only be good throughout the end of January, and sign up for the whole year. You will save on an entire month as well. So that is mainly the changes. And just quickly going over, this week we have a lot of stuff on the cafe to kind of kick off this promotion. On Thursday, we're going to have a loaded show with Karen and Bruce previewing both nights at the Tokyo Dome. That will be on the cafe. And then this coming weekend, both Bruce and Karen, they will be doing a free review of Wrestle Kingdom. Wai and I are going to do a kind of quick thoughts recap of Wrestle Kingdom, and then a more detailed review on Sunday of Wrestle Dynasty. So that is all coming up this week. Later in the month, we'll be doing TNA Genesis and the People versus GCW, and multiple Rewind-A-Ways, and the return of MCU later, which has a year-end review special that will be out on Friday.
And that will be available for all free tiered members. Sorry, for free tiered members. What am I saying? All free subscribers. They got me speaking Max and Netflix speak right now. But if you're subscribed, you're going to get that. Hear from WH and Rich. They'll be back actually on a weekly basis this month talking about Daredevil, the original Daredevil run on Netflix, as we gear things up towards the Disney Plus debut of Born Again.
So no changes if you're a postwrestlingcafe.com member. If you want everything unchanged, it's $6 a month. We hope you give it a sample and just see what you're missing out on. Maybe you don't want to stick around, but this is a great month to kind of test the waters, and hopefully you like what you sign up for.
I would actually say that the only change for Post Wrestling Cafe members is that you're getting more. We're putting a lot more effort into just making sure that you guys are getting your value. We're not raising our prices at all. We're just choosing to put a lot more stuff in there. And that includes our best and worst of show that we just did on Monday with our friends at the BD.
Yes, and we want to thank everyone that checked out the best and worst of show. It seems that a lot of people enjoyed our show. We went about 3 hours with myself, Wai, Braden, and Davey going through 22 different categories on what the best and worst of the year had to offer in 2024. So feel free to jump onto the forum if you have any questions, and Wai and I will monitor those as well. But this goes into effect next Wednesday, so that's when the format change will take place. On to a couple of news items today. I'm going to direct people to the story I wrote today on the passing of Sweet Daddy Siki, but just to just kind of go over some couple of details. I mean, Sweet Daddy Siki, I think everyone has a visual in mind of Sweet Daddy Siki. He had such an iconic look. Here is this black performer that dyed his hair blonde, and this happened later into his career. It was in Montreal when he first started being billed as Sweet Daddy Siki. But of course, this was a look that would be mimicked many, many times in the future, right up to Shelton Benjamin when he was in WWE as well. But I mean, this was somebody that, going extensively through his career today, it really reads like a movie, the kind of life that this man held. He was, Greg Oliver is somebody that, Sweet Daddy Siki was an extremely private individual, to the point that until today, I'm sure most people did not even know his real name or his actual birth date. Like, Greg Oliver had this information that could not come out till after he had died. He was very, very private. But his real name was Elkin James, and he was born June 16th of 1933. A lot of people assumed his name was Reginald Siki, but his actual name was Elkin James. And he was born in Texas. He grew up in Los Angeles, and he was drafted to the Army, served in Korea, where he became a corporal, and then was discharged. And while he had dabbled a little bit in pro wrestling, it was after serving that he really went in head first and trained at a school in LA that was actually run by Sandor Zabo, who was a former NWA world champion, but never actually trained under him. Debuted in 1955, and then, he became a protege of Buddy Rogers, who was a future NWA and WWF champion. He, of course, being a black performer in this era where you can imagine the segregation and racism that he encountered, that was even more so for him when he married a white woman and saw bookings go down. And he ended up moving to Toronto in the early 60s and went all over the country. He still did do dates in the U.S. He had stops in Texas. He went to Hawaii. He went overseas. But in Canada, I mean, he became a major draw at Maple Leaf Gardens. He became a big star in Stampede for Stu Hart, in the Maritimes for Emile Dupree's Grand Prix. He was just somebody that was in so many various territories, and especially in Toronto, where he was somebody that was a fixture in this city. And his career he continued like well into the 80s. He competed in Puerto Rico. He went all over the place, and also like didn't just dabble into music, but put out multiple albums, and then became a fixture in Toronto, where up until a couple of years ago, this guy every single week was going to the Duke Tavern and hosting karaoke. This was a weekly fixture. And I didn't even know he had stopped this when the pandemic began. But I mean, Wai and I had gone multiple times to see him. I mean, Dan Lavransky like pretty much had a season's pass at the Duke to go just hang out with Sweet Daddy Siki. And it was always amazing to me that here we would be at this bar, and this guy that like, I'm aware of the history of this individual. Like, here is someone that has links to Buddy Rogers and to just another era. But again, he was so private. And in 2017, John and Paige, the Megan brothers, they produced a documentary on him, and it was all Greg Oliver that was essentially there to get Siki to go ahead with this documentary. Like, he was not somebody that was going to talk too much about his life, about his career. And, Greg Oliver was one of the few reporters that gained that confidence. And it took years of that trust being built up. But him and Ron Hutchison and Johnny Powers, they were involved at what was Sully's gym, and he had that aspect of things where he was a trainer. Most famously, he was involved in training Adam Copeland, who we saw tonight, as well as Christian. And then him and Ron Hutchison had a falling out around 1994. And this was not really known about, because even years later, people had assumptions that Siki was involved in training other students that came through Sully's, like a Trish Stratus. But Siki was actually removed from that, and it was something that Ron Hutchison never even got a understanding of what this falling out was over when he wrote about it in his book a few years ago. But he had been suffering from Alzheimer's disease. His wife had died about 11 years ago, and he had two children, Reg and Justin. And Greg Oliver did note that he was aware that Siki did have other children who he just did not have a relationship with and never really went into any kind of detail with. But yeah, he was 91 years old, and somebody that just, I know it's a different generation, but I'm very curious to see, Wai, in like the next day or two, if there's like Toronto media that does any kind of notable stories on him, because he really was a big star that was not just contained to one section of the country. Like if you did get to see his documentary, like you could, like Bret Hart was an enormous fan of Siki's, as were many people. Like, he crossed over to, boxers that, were fans of his, and just, he was a, going back to the Dumont network where he performed on, and then you had all the music. Like, there's so many interesting elements. And to be quite honest, I think like what I was able to look at today it's really only scratching the surface with a really fascinating individual that selfishly I wish was more open about, just this link to history that he represented. There's not too many people, that are in their 90s that have like such incredible careers that date back to these figures that you're only going to be reading about and not necessarily hearing firsthand accounts about.
Yeah, he's always been somebody that like Brett has frequently mentioned and celebrated as like one of his childhood heroes.
Yeah.
But honestly, my knowledge of him is through karaoke at the Duke, okay, for Dan the Mouth Labransky's birthday parties. And you would never know that the person controlling the laser disc or whatever, like, this karaoke machine, taking my requests for songs to sing in front of, like, this is a pretty divey, old time bar at the Duke. You would have never guessed that this person would have this very illustrious history in professional wrestling. And he seemed incredibly humble about it. Maybe part of the reason why he didn't talk about it so much was because he's just like, hey, like, he's a normal guy. I'm very sad that, to hear about this. And somebody who's, I think, hopefully his legend will maybe be discussed and celebrated that much more in the next few days.
They should rename the Duke. Siki's.
I think that's a great name for a bar somewhere.
I think it'd be a great name.
Yeah.
Well, rest in peace to Sweet Daddy Siki. And I really do encourage people to go check out a number of pieces Greg Oliver has put up at Slam Wrestling. And like I believe that the story of Sweet Daddy Siki is largely, it's going to be told because of someone like a Greg Oliver. That was one of the few that got to really know him and be able to tell his story, because so much I think would have been just lost to history or fictional history that was attached to him, like his name, and even the work of like Al Getz and others that were able to track down what his real name was. They have a piece on Slam about that, about just tracking down his name. It is fascinating. And it's like the work of historians in wrestling, they rarely get the spotlight that they deserve. And today was certainly evidence of that to me. On the historical accounts way, we have now 2 streaming services uploading hours and hours of wrestling content, between the WWE officially launching on Netflix today and AEW on Max. So have you had a chance to scan Netflix at all and be able to track down where can I find my Smoky Mountain Wrestling?
Not on Netflix.
No.
I don't think. No.
There is no non-WWE content that is up there. No WCW, no ECW.
Yeah,
but
I guess
I
the
will
closest
say,
thing you would consider to it is December to Dismember.
Dismember.
Yeah, which is, I guess, a joint WWE.
That is going to be the
show.
legacy of ECW on Netflix.
Yeah.
But what they do have, I mean, it's not every pay-per-view, but a pretty high percentage of pay-per-views going back to 1985 WWE pay-per-views are up there, and others that look to be added. Like there's a handful of them. They do have, they have vault sections for Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. The last 3 years, they have every episode of Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. Pre-2022, it's pretty scattered, and I don't know if it's going to be a case where these will be filled up over the years or if they're just going to leave it to scattered episodes. But I was surprised, like things like Over the Edge, 1999, that's up there. So it does tell you, like, I would say on the pay-per-views, it seems like the goal is to get every pay-per-view up there. The TVs probably are not going to be full, but they also have, stuff like Big E hosting a Raw retrospective show. They've got these really quick Superstar Legends profiles, some best of top 10s. We got the volume there.
I'm sorry. Oh,
damn.
I stream nerd. Sorry about that.
But yeah, that's it. I mean, if you're the completist, you might not be over the moon about this, but I mean, it is the stuff that they view as the core content that people are going to be seeking out. It's honestly a lot more of the pay-per-views than I assumed were going to be up there. Like, they've got every Mania, every Rumble, like most. I would guess off the top of my head, 90% at least of all WWE pay-per-views can be found there.
I have to think that they have enough data of what people are accessing mainly, through the WWE Network or even Peacock to be able to say, hey, let's give priority to putting these things out. As unfortunate as I think like retro review podcasters may find it, I do wonder how much your common Peacock subscriber or network subscriber was using a lot of that stuff. But it remains to be seen. I have a feeling that I think as demand grows, and with the wrestling audience, demand will grow. So I'm very sorry, on behalf of all wrestling fans, to whoever's controlling the Netflix social media right now. I have a feeling things will continue to get populated, as at least in regards to Raw and SmackDown and even NXT archives. Whether or not we get I'm sure that your next tier is going to be like the WCW pay-per-view library or ECW pay-per-view library. Somebody's gonna want some.
We'll see. I'm curious, if over time, some of this stuff disappears, if they find it's not getting the traction. As I've mentioned, I think there's definitely an opening of a separate service that WWE could put, whether it's through YouTube or wherever, to put things like that your ardent fan will subscribe to. The issue though is that technically, internationally, Netflix has the rights to those.
And is it worthwhile when you're talking about a company that is dealing with such large numbers? Is it worthwhile for them to target a niche audience anymore, with the exception of the WWE Vault, which is sort of a very interesting experiment to continue to monitor?
That's probably the best distribution method for them. I don't know what that number is that are going for watching Nitro from 30 years ago. I mean, there are some that will fire that up, but I think that number is exceptionally low. Mm-hmm. And then for the Max side of things, they've put up all the 2019 shows. So that's the first 3 months of Dynamite and their first 5 pay-per-view events that are up there, as well as recent stuff as well. So in that case, we do know that they are planning to fill it out. And I would imagine within a certain amount of time, I'm sure everything will eventually make its way up onto Max. But that is their US only, of course, for Max as well. But, that's if you are shut out of your Mid-South daily viewing, there's some great AEW stuff from 2019 that you can go back and watch, because they have some incredible stuff in their library. I hope they find a way to promote some of this stuff, and they have a lot of current stuff to promote. But man, there's a ton of stuff in there. They could certainly benefit from having something akin to a Vault channel, where it's almost like a preview of what you can get more of on Max.
Yeah, I would say 5 years in, you've kind of gotten to the point where you could be nostalgic about your own history. And certainly, I like the way that they're rolling this out, concentrating on the first year first, promoting year one as the thing that you'd get, because it was a really strong year and really interesting to look back on, I'm sure, at this point. So, listen, they have a lot of things that they have to promote, John. I wonder how much promotional power they can put behind even something like this. But the fact that it's out there, I think, is very exciting for AEW fans.
Excalibur was not tasked with listing off all the episodes that are available now.
You should list every single match that is uploaded.
On to November 2019. Yeah. Today, Noah held what will probably be their biggest show of the year at Nippon Budokan, where they drew 5,088, just almost a wash from last year, where they did 5,135 for the infamous Kota Ibushi Naomichi Marufuji match, a match that was brought up on our Best and Worst of show. You can find out what award it took. Some of the highlights of the show, as we go to Karen Peterson's report up on the site. Tadasuke won the won the opening match Rumble. We had Hayata and Yohei retain the junior heavyweight tag titles in a three-way, beating Amakusa and Junta Miyawaki, as well as Alejandro and Kai Fujimura. In an 8-man New Year limit break match, Go Shiozaki, Atsushi Kotoge, Hajime Ohara, and Mohamed Yone defeated Black Menzori, Kazuyuki Fujita, Shuji Ishikawa, and Tetsuya Endo. And then Kazuyuki Fujita and Daiki Otoshima had a 60-second time limit draw. These are the kinds of matches that I look forward to from Kazuyuki Fujita in the new year. 60-second time limit.
It's the TikTok time limit.
That's it. That's all we need. Short attention spans. Galeno Del Mal defeated El Hijo del Dr. Wagner Jr. In a... I have seen portions of this show. One of the matches I saw, Kenta and Keno, on January 1st, 2025, is John Pollock's match of the year so far, I can say after watching Dynamite. This was the best Kenta match I have seen in the longest time. The story of this is that Keno was a protege of Kenta's, mainly came to Noah to follow Kenta, and then, of course, Kenta left, and he held a win over Keno from like a decade ago. This match is about as physically hard-hitting as you are going to see. The slaps in this match, the kicks were absolutely insane. They are right in line with what you would expect, especially from Keno. But I mean, it may not be for everyone. Like, this was an extremely hard-hitting match, but my God, was it was tremendous. So I would recommend that match. Ada defeated Daga for the junior heavyweight title to win that belt in a 2 out of 3 falls match. Manabu Soya defeated Masa Kitamiya to retain the national championship. Was told that was really excellent too. But Wai, when I loaded up this show this afternoon, what do you think was the first match I went to watch?
The greatest Japanese wrestler to ever live,
Omos and Jack Morris, my new favorite tag team, defeating Naomichi Marufuji and Takashi Sugiura. Omos is now holding the GHC tag titles. When I saw Omos come into the ring and extend his arms and roar, and then go to put his hand up for a test of strength, challenging Takashi Sugiura, this is the company this man is destined to be. He needs to be in Noah 6 months minimum. I think that this... I don't know why they have taken so long. They have basically just sidelined this guy for 2 years where he's been doing house shows. This is where this man should be for the time being. He should spend this whole year in Noah. And the fact they are putting the tag belts on them, great. He's in a tag team with Jack Morris. They're doing the exact same idea they had when they paired him with AJ Styles. And this match, they protected Omos. It's like the other guys did all the heavy lifting. Omos did select spots. And this crowd, they're in awe of this guy. It was no surprise. This is not some incredible match, but it was great handling of Omos, and I think that I am very curious to see if he benefits from this time in Noah, and if WWE can, reap some benefits out of Omos at a later date.
I think it's a brilliant idea for a talent like Omos, who, I mean, I would suggest maybe the fact that we haven't seen him lately is because in current WWE, I think you need certain attributes in order to be presentable, or at least at a high level. And unfortunately, I think all Omos had going for him was size. I think he needs to gain a bit more variety in what he's able to do. And I think Japan is going to be the place where he'll learn some of those things. Yes, he's going to be relying on his size even more so. But I also think he's going to learn a lot more of the intricacies of just professional wrestling. And I'm very excited to see, number one, how Noah presents him. Number two, how Omos develops, what skills he's able to, or new wrinkles he's able to show in this context. And I'm very curious to see how WWE mentions or presents, Omos's tour of Japan, if at all. I have to think they would, because this is great publicity that I think he's getting on the underground.
And then Shinsuke Nakamura defeated Uka Sasaki, second from the top. A pretty excellent Shinsuke Nakamura entrance. Wai, your favorite type of entrance for a big-time show. The taiko drums were brought out for Shinsuke Nakamura.
Of course. Interesting.
Yes.
And like, did they? I wonder if they tried to tie it into like the last time he was here for the Buddha match.
Not as much. Like, they did bring up the fact that he was there 2 years ago, but he was fully playing the new character you're seeing in WWE.
But the new character has a lot of similarities to Muta.
Yeah, I guess they were just they were really not, like, he did win with the Mist, but I mean, at least, like, I watched this with the English commentary, and they certainly weren't like drawing anything like he has drawn anything from Muto. But I mean, it was brought up nonetheless. So he won. I thought it was a good match, some like good submission work from the two of them, and they explained the backstory of these two pretty well. Not like a blowaway match, but I mean, fine for the time that they had, which was about 15 minutes. And then the main event was Ozawa defeating Kaito Kiyomiya, ending his GHC heavyweight championship reign. And this one came highly recommended from Karen Peterson, but have not seen the main event yet. So that was the Noah show. And yes, we have Omos's international excursion has officially kicked off with championship gold.
Yeah, they uploaded a great video of him walking through Shibuya Crossing the other day. I just need more of that. I need Omos like walking through like Japanese doors, living in a capsule hotel. Like, I want him just like, I just wanted daily vlogs of Omos's life in Japan.
Other notes from some of the shows going on. Jun Saito defeated Davey Boy Smith Jr. on New Year's Eve for All Japan show in front of 2,500 people at Yoyogi National Stadium, number 2, on Monday night. And then the Stardom Dream Queendom show, which took place on Saturday on the 29th, included Saya Kamatani winning the World of Stardom title from Tom Nakano, and a match I did catch was Starlight Kid defeating Natsupoi for the Wonder of Stardom title. This match was every bit as great as the Mercedes Moné and Chris Statlander match that we just watched at World's End. This was outstanding. It was such a fantastic match that these two had. So those were some of the highlights from Stardom. Wei, did you have any thoughts, any reaction to the closing segment on Raw between CM Punk and Seth Rollins setting up their match for the Netflix debut?
I thought it was an outstanding go-home segment. So outstanding that I know they're peaking this for this Netflix show. I also know that at the moment, I think there's a lot of discussion about Punk having another opponent for WrestleMania that's not Seth Rollins. But I thought this segment was so strong that it felt like it was big enough for a WrestleMania. And I know, like, you know, I guess the word is like they're trying to make this Netflix show feel like it's a WrestleMania level show. I almost think like it could be bigger than that. But that's how strong I felt about this segment. I thought it was CM Punk, I think, at his peak, you know, as a promo.
I thought both of them were just dynamite on this segment. Like, the point of a promo segment like this is, are you more or less excited for this match? And they hit it out of the park. I thought it was so it was just excellent. It was everything you wanted to hit on to build this match for next week. I think if I am just looking at what is the best viable way to do this, I think Rollins wins this match, Punk wins the Rumble, and then Punk has his title shot for Mania, and Rollins is holding this win over Punk. And you could incorporate, like, obviously you get a rematch, whether that's Elimination Chamber in Toronto, whether it's something that you square up between night 1 and night 2 or something like that. I just think there's a bit more juice if Rollins wins this, with Punk then potentially coming out and winning the Rumble, and then having, you know, this loss to Rollins kind of on his shoulder.
I think you could do that. I think there's an argument to be made about, like, just strapping the rocket onto Punk, especially if he's going to, you know, challenge for the championship potentially at WrestleMania. I also tend to think maybe having a loss for Seth Rollins might further this Seth Rollins like slightly heel, maybe even on its way to being a full heel character soon. I found it really interesting the way presented it. I think CM Punk is excellent at, you know, weaving into things that you're not really supposed to say, and this was about as, you know, overt of a Vince McMahon reference that as we've had in several months, maybe since the last time he brought it up against Drew McIntyre,
the man who used to run this place.
Yeah, and I think positioning his opponent Seth Rollins as the corporate stooge, like you know, the choice of the man who has been shamed and ousted from the industry over the past year, is awesome. It's a great way of healing Seth, or at least getting people to side with Punk. And I'm curious to see. I want to see more of this story, so I hope they go beyond this Netflix debut.
Did you see Vince McMahon on Raw Monday?
No, I did not.
They did a retrospective package on the history of Raw, and it was very interesting because the voice to introduce it was Jim Ross, and then I think it was Michael Cole. So they didn't use Vince's voice, but they did show the Austin Tyson angle with McMahon getting in between them from the 98 angle between them. So there was a brief shot of Vince McMahon.
Yeah, and so what? Like, it's really hard to avoid, when you're talking about the history of the show. He's completely linked to it, and I think you don't need to overtly mention him or celebrate him, but to show him in footage from the past, I think is totally fine.
I didn't think it was like
I feel that way about Benoit. Again, like, I wouldn't celebrate a Benoit moment, but like if he happens to be in the background, or at least even the person on the other side, I don't feel like you should hide from that.
Well, I mean, these promos, they clearly, like, even with one like this where they're tap dancing around, it's not like they want to say his name. I mean, it's still like the man that will not be mentioned. So they do go to that level of things. But they also added for Monday Drew McIntyre against Jey Uso, and confirming John Cena's appearance on the show as well. So that's going to be a loaded up show. And by this time next week, we're going to be talking about concurrent streaming figures, worldwide audience. People are going to be comparing a worldwide number to past Raw domestic numbers. Get ready. The ratings discourse, if you think it's going away, folks, it's about to get insane. That's my prediction.
Let's go.
All right, well, let's go to AEW's Fight for the Fallen, taking place at Harrah's Cherokee Center in Asheville, North Carolina. WrestleTix reporting 3,332 tickets distributed. And how does AEW say hello to the new Mother of All Simulcasts? How does it welcome in the Max era? The Pointer Sisters.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. I'm so scared. I love this. I think it's awesome. It's so out of nowhere. At least like with the Elton John song, he says Saturday. With this, it's just like a generic, like, I'm really excited. I haven't really dug into the lyrics to know exactly what the Pointer Sisters were excited about, but I mean, maybe they were excited about professional wrestling. I love it. It's like sort of one of those sort of like, what the fuck type of like choices that is so unusual for a professional wrestling show, and it's like the right type of weird that I'm really attracted to.
My bigger question is that, so they not only have they got the Pointer Sisters for Dynamite, Elton John is coming back for Collision beginning this Saturday for 2025. Had Rampage been renewed, would The Cure have been licensed?
That would be a wonderful choice.
Rampage, yeah. I'm in love.
Yeah. Are there songs about? There must be songs about Wednesdays. When you tabulate like what all the songs, like what days of the week that have songs written about them. I mean, Mondays I feel like have plenty of a variety. Fridays have options. Saturdays have options. But Wednesdays I can't really think of too many off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm really curious if there's some grand story behind how they arrived at this one. But yeah, I mean, sure, I'm always in for oddball.
I just googled
themes.
Songs about Wednesdays, and I'm clearly wrong. There are a lot of Wednesday songs, but maybe nothing.
Do any jump out at you, as a lost opportunity?
I don't know if I know any of them.
Yeah,
quite honestly.
Not a popular day of the week. Probably not a lot of popular songs written about Wednesdays.
Yeah, we could have a Wednesday Lover by Jagged Edge. Wednesday Week by The Undertones, Waiting for Wednesday by Lisa Loeb. Yeah, I don't know if any of these are such great options.
Maybe these artists will be paying AEW to take their song, and maybe it'll be a reversal.
Maybe.
So we kick things off with reaction from the Death Riders after World's End, and Moxley speaking about how Marina Shafir took a bullet and said that he grabbed this company by the strap and dragged it to safety during a pandemic. He took bullet after bullet for AEW, and he will destroy this title before he lets anyone get their fingers on it. He is the king, and he issues a warning to Adam Copeland. We go to Rated FTR backstage, and Copeland says how he saw fear in Moxley's eyes at World's End, and I'm sicker than you, Mox. Orange Cassidy and Hangman Page, our first match of the year on Dynamite. A really strong opener between these two. Immediately, they're going for their kill shots with the orange punch and buckshot that both get avoided. And then it's Page taking over during picture-in-picture as Max viewers are like, what the hell? Where did my match go? And we'll see what the second quarter looks like on the quarter hours, if there was a big spike from Max viewers that just retreated back to TBS or not. Cassidy lands a suicide dive, but is then caught, thrown into the barricade, and does his comeback with the hands in the pockets, catches him with a pair of satellite DDTs, and then Page responds with a lariat. The buckshot, they were a little off here, but he hit the beach break, gets a 2 count, and then Orange hits 2 orange punches, sends Page to the edge of the apron where he lands a third one, but Page just eats the orange punches, fires back, landing the buckshot to pin Cassidy in 12 minutes and 54 seconds.
I thought it was an excellent match. You know, two guys who I think have been good since the beginning of AEW's run, but they've only gotten better over the years, both as characters, as promos, and in-ring as well. Technically perfect, very creative sequences. I think for a season premiere of sorts, you know, which is this episode, and a debut in front of potentially a new audience, I thought it was a very good match to lead off with. You know, it's a good representation of AEW's in-ring quality with two people who have been there the entire time.
Yeah, I agreed. I thought this was a really, really strong opener. Page keeps attacking and hits a dead eye. So Cassidy is holding his neck. And then another man that was represented on our show Monday, Christopher Daniels, runs out, getting into his friend Hangman's face. And he starts attacking Daniels. Shivani explains he's not an EVP anymore, but he's still an official at AEW. And a friend too. And Page yells for Daniels to stay out of his business. At this point, I'm completely backing Hangman's argument here. It's like, you made this big plea last week that you would help me. Where in God's name were you on Saturday? And now you come out and get involved here. Where were you on Saturday? I have no time for this, Christopher Daniels.
This is what I'm assuming Page was saying to Daniels. At least what I would have said if I was him. Yeah.
I don't want a resolution here. I don't need an answer from Christopher Daniels.
Not at all. I think this entire Daniels association with Page has been very unexpected. It's not like everybody remembers like any sort of like close tie the two have had. Yes, I know they were on BT together. They were in ROH together. So what? Like, everybody's been in ROH with each other at this point. It doesn't necessarily make me think of these two as having any sort of close ties. I'm not buying this like friendship that I think they're trying to sell us, and I'm certainly not that interested in seeing any sort of follow up at this point.
Jay White reacted to the loss in the 4-way at World's End and how Yuta cost him the match when he attacked the referee, but says he has an alternate path to Jon Moxley by winning the Casino Gauntlet that they're going to hold next Wednesday. And of course, in the Casino Gauntlet, it's beneficial the earlier you come into the match. So tonight's 3-way with Roderick Strong and Swerve Strickland with Jay White will determine who is the number 1 seed in the Gauntlet next week. So that's Jay White's new plan.
Yeah. I'm interested in seeing coming out of this this main event on Saturday at this point, like how the audience perceives all the baby faces that were in there. Because I think like somebody like a Jay White, in comparison to a Hangman Page got a better babyface reception, in my opinion, in that match, or even in the build up to it, than Jay White did. And coming out of it, I felt they were course correcting slightly here with doing that post-match attack with Page, so that it reminds us that, hey, like, we should actually be booing Hangman Page, okay? We're not supposed to be cheering this guy who's attacking officials and all that. Whereas Jay White, I had a bit of momentum, I thought, maybe coming off of the Page feud. Certainly coming off of his return, I think got a great like babyface sort of like reception. But I feel like this certainly taking the pin against Mox, and just even the build to the main event at World's End itself, I think has kind of taken him down a step. I'm not really feeling, you know, the motivation for the audience to want to see him, you know, be crowded as like a top guy. But maybe Grand Slam will be slightly different if we get any mentions of Grand Slam.
It was mentioned tonight in passing by Shivani that we are going to Australia. But it is interesting, like all the graphics are inside the arena are all pushing you towards Revolution on March 9th. So like it at least feels like Grand Slam feels more like it's going to be a television special more so than what we thought was going to be this big kind of pay-per-view or streaming only event that would be kind of like your big February pay-per-view. It kind of feels more so like this was going to be in a stadium at one point before they scaled it down to the Brisbane Entertainment Center. But I mean, if you watched tonight's show, unless you caught that Shivani line, you wouldn't have even heard this being brought up yet.
When you suggest television special, do you mean like in place of Collision? Because it is on a Saturday, or
I guess that's possible. Like Tony Khan stated, like the distribution is he noted the fact that it would be tough with the time zone to make it a pay-per-view. So I mean, it could stream on Max, or it could just air on delay in the Collision slot, which that's a hell of a long trip for 2 hours to produce.
Yeah, I would imagine it'd probably be more than that. You know, they're going to be doing more than 2 hours of wrestling, and I imagine there's going to be a spot for people to see it all. We're just guessing at this point, so I'm sure in the weeks ahead you'll hear.
The next match was Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin against the Acclaimed, where Caster comes out covering his mouth. He's not going to rap, and we go to an insert where the Acclaimed are arguing because Bowens wants to know right there as they're doing their interview if Max meant to hit him on Rampage that caused his loss to Chris Jericho. And they argue, and Bowens tells him to keep his head in the game, and Caster promises to. MVP is on commentary. Bowens and Caster can't get along here, and either this was a really deep reference to them not getting along. They decided to blow this spot where Bowens was in, and he was running the ropes, and Caster was supposed to blind tag him, but he was on the wrong side of the ring, so he tries to he thinks he's like long arm on cops, like he's gonna reach Bowens. It's like nowhere close. Bowens kind of holds up because he knows what the spot is to be. So then Caster repositions himself to the proper side of the ring, and then they go forward with the spot. I mean, this was just, if they're trying to tell a story that they're not on the same page, mission accomplished.
Yeah, we hate each other so much. You forgot to blind tag me.
You blew our spot in the match. This is some deep WCW 99 style of booking. So, I mean, these two, Caster gets tagged in, and Benjamin just does the multiple Germans as Bowens watches from the floor. Lashley spears Caster, slams him, and wins with the Hurt Lock in 4:11 as Bowens yells at Caster that you're a selfish asshole and walks to the back. Sometimes I like the subtle problems in developing between teams. This is just more overt, where you're just loudly calling him an asshole.
Yeah, I think in this case, though, you need to be a bit more overt because a lot of the airtime and a lot of the progression that's been taking place between these two has not really been loud enough. Or at least, if it has been, it's been so, I think stretched out that it doesn't really feel like top of mind anymore. So I hope this is, their attempt at giving it, this sort of, main stage focus so that, we're actually going to get some sort of conclusion coming up soon. This, as a match, was... just a way for the Hurt Syndicate to really demonstrate their dominance. They're racking up wins, and on the losing end, it gave Acclaim some fuel to further their own story.
Alex Marvez, who was playing the role of Renee all night long because she was not there, interviewed Swerve and Nana, and Swerve has been distracted for the last couple of weeks, but tonight he gets back to what he does best. Little did we know that meant bleeding. Jamie Hayter and Julia Hart. This was Julia Hart's return match, and I did not think this one went off too smoothly. We had dueling chants for the women, and then Hayter responds with a hate breaker over the knee. Hart gets her boot up in the corner, but misses a top rope moonsault, and then the Heartless is applied, but Hayter lifts her to her feet into an Ushi-Goroshi, and Hart then trips her off the turnbuckle, grabbing the leg out from under her. Hart then goes and gets the arrow. I think this was the last one in CM Punk's back. And Aubrey, like a honest and ethical referee, took the arrow away from Julia Hart. And then behind Aubrey's back, Julia Hart, winning in the same way Shinsuke Nakamura did a few hours ago, uses the mist to pin Jamie Hayter in 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm. I think first matches after long layoffs, and Julia Hart hasn't wrestled since April. I think first matches after long layoffs are a little bit tough to judge and criticize, because certainly for the performers, I think simply coming back and getting into a ring is already a huge accomplishment. But that said, all I could do is really kind of talk about this as if I didn't know about the layoff. And just judging by maybe the in-ring quality here, I would have considered the match disappointing, partially due to the lack of engagement from the crowd, who, if you, I think, just like watch this, you wouldn't have thought that this crowd was aware that this was supposed to be, somebody's return match after months off the shelf. I also was,
and she's also supposed to be the heel in this scenario. And Julia Hart, number one, I think she's like a character that a lot of people like. She had these cool vignettes, and like they haven't done a whole lot to get you to rally behind a Jamie Hayter either. So it was.
Oh, listen, I think this was a challenging feud to begin with, because I see them as both baby faces. Certainly, if you're watching those vignettes, they look so cool that it's almost impossible to want to like boo her. And I think even before she left, she was already like flirting with being a babyface. And I don't want to get into our House of Black debate anymore, but I feel the faction is the babyface faction.
House of Light.
So, but you're talking about people like who still really like Jamie Hayter, and to really kind of like side with one was a bit tougher. I also thought in ring it lacked a certain aggression that I've kind of come to expect from the women's division now. Failed to feel special, unfortunately, is what I'm taken away with.
Yeah, I thought it fell below what people were expecting. They recapped the Ospreay Fletcher feud and emphasizing at the end that they are 1-1. So they are disregarding that TV match they did well early in the year, but to be quite honest, I had forgotten about it too till I was doing my research.
It's a new Carl Fletcher.
Show. Yeah. And it's since the Fletcher turn, they are 1-1.
Since you shave your head, I think your record.
You're a brand new person, and honestly, with that hair that Fletcher had, he has been reborn. And then we were like 50 minutes into the show when they finally noted that Kazuchika Okada won the Continental Classic, and oh yeah, Kenny Omega returned. I really feel this should have been more like the headline to start the show. Like, this is your big tournament of the year, and this guy won. It's a little thing, but anyway. Okada has now tied Chono, as they reminded us, and Omega returns Saturday. Oh, wait, next week. Next week he returns.
To this show, at least, yeah.
Yeah, because they did do an incredible video package for AEW's co-promoted event on Saturday, where Kenny Omega will return to the ring after 14 months.
What was the extent of Wrestle Dynasty mentions or
Mercedes segment was it. That was all they mentioned.
Yeah. Like this is kind of nothing new, I think, when it comes to AEW and their relationship with New Japan, certainly, and maybe all the other promotions that might use them. I don't necessarily disagree with their tact here, because they have enough to promote. You're on a new platform. Again, this was very much, I think, an episode that I think through all of these video packages, they're attempting to slightly cater towards a new audience. And I think just confusing them with like too much mentions of like a show that you're kind of associated with, but not available on any of your platforms. I think that would just be too confusing.
Well, I mean, it's the argument of like, you are partners with this.
But to what extent? You're partners in that you're lending talent, but you're also not obligated to sell their show on their streaming platform for them.
Well, I think vice versa. I would just argue that like it is not a New Japan show that you are sending them to. Like, this is a co-promoted show, as they have stated.
Yeah, but one that they don't necessarily benefit from.
Well, okay. Then, like, almost like, why even send?
Strategically, I just understand why they aren't. Because it kind of interferes with their storylines, and like they will pick and cherry pick from it and use it for their storylines when it's.
Will they acknowledge the Gabe Kidd match next week when Kenny Omega returns?
You will hear a mention from Excalibur, which is the extent of I think this this sort of relationship.
All right. There's an Okada video
because they want to keep it fresh for their own show.
Okay, right. I'm trying to figure out how this all works. If we will acknowledge the match after the fact, but not before.
There's a difference between acknowledging and promoting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I could tune in next week. I was like, wait a minute, Kenny Omega wrestled last weekend? Where can I see this? I missed it.
If you care enough to have that reaction, you probably already know that the match is happening.
So there was an Okada video, and he referred to Will Ospreay as Little Brother. A lot of Little Brother references this week. Mm-hmm. and he tells Omega to stay out of his business. Bitch. I don't think he's going to stay out of his business. That's my thought.
No, probably not.
But maybe Christopher Daniels will get in between them first for a few months.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mercedes comes out for a celebration. I think she deserved the celebration after these last couple of matches she's had, and promotes her match with Mina Shirakawa, but then stated, I'm not even going to tell you where to watch this because it's too much on everyone's plate. And she aired her own video. There were a lot of video packages on this show, and this recapped her year, beating Stephanie Vaquer, Willow, Britt Baker, Statlander, even highlights of the Hazuki match, and being 15-0 in AEW this year, mixed in with her rankings that SI put out about best women's matches this year. And Mina has one thing I want, more gold, as she is. It's a double title match with the strong women's belt against Shirakawa's British women's title from Rev Pro. So that was the extent of the Wrestle Dynasty promotion on the show.
I love this video package. I especially love them using the SI top 10 to add credibility to these accomplishments. I think it's a great way to use real world statistics, as much as we might argue about them, to hype up their appeal above the competition. We have the number one female wrestler, I guess if you want to call it that, on our roster. Technically, this match took place in New Japan, but again, it's a complicated relationship that they have. They will use it when it's convenient for them, and I love the simplicity of it. It also is a great way to pause and do a victory lap for certain talents and for the promotion, which I think is really necessary for AEW. Sometimes they move so fast, you don't have the time to really digest and look back at the things that you did really well. And I thought this actually really helped recontextualize Mercedes Moné's 2024, which, let's be honest, was, I think, certainly for a good portion of it, pretty shaky, especially before she actually was able to wrestle. But her in-ring accomplishments, I think, were actually very good by the end of the year, and a video like this helps remind us that, hey, 2024 was actually pretty damn good for her.
I mean, you're always going to have the recency effect, and these last 2 months, she's been on fire, and I think that is she is really rolling at this point. And we'll see if this continues on Saturday with the Mina Shirakawa match. They showed a PSA for the various relief efforts for Hurricane Helene, as the reason is why they're here in Asheville, with first responders showing. And then Marvez is with the completed Undisputed Kingdom: Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, and Roderick Strong. They said the Undisputed Kingdom is now complete, even though members were missing. And this is going to be our year.
Fish must be watching this and he's just seething.
Yeah, I was Kyle O'Reilly for pretty much the last 5 months for Adam Cole's stories, from the Malachi Black hug on to the MJF interactions. They're going for all the titles. This is going to be their year. And they're going to start next with Roderick Strong in a three-way with Jay White and Swerve Strickland. Winner becomes number one in the Casino Gauntlet next week. And we come out of the gates with...
So just on this, I mean, I feel like I probably wasn't the only person asking about Kyle O'Reilly's status with the conglomeration at the moment. I thought that they would mention it here, but they haven't, and I feel like that might be for a reason.
I would be shocked if that is not going to be some lingering issue. There is no way they are just not going to make that a thing, that Kyle O'Reilly is double dipping here.
Oh, the conflict is perfect for storyline. Yeah, are you not allowed to be members of two factions in AEW?
We don't have a precedent for this. Why can't you be a dual member of various groups?
Maybe we'll get a merger.
Yeah. Okay.
Undisputed conglomeration. Kingdom.
Undisputed conglomeration. Yeah, that sounds...
Sorry. No.
That'd be great. So Swerve hits a Fosbury flop onto Jay White, and then Strong dumps White over the top to the floor as we go to the break. And then Swerve powerbombs Strong into White in the corner. And then it's Strong who executes a code breaker. The house call misses Strong, and Swerve avoids a Blade Runner. And as Swerve is selling on the floor, up walks contract killer Ricochet. He walks up with a pair of golden scissors and proceeds to stab Swerve. As Excalibur announces the one question on everyone's mind as we're watching attempted murder, Excalibur notes, there are no disqualifications in a three-way match. It's like, yes, you can literally just gun a man down if you so desire. And folks, Steve Urkel has left the building, and Strong rolls.
Stefan never did this.
My God. Strong rolls White into the ring, and he's caught with a Blade Runner. So Jay White wins, but this attack continues, and Swerve is bleeding buckets. Ricochet just slowly walks towards him and starts stabbing him again with these scissors. He threatens Nana and then hits him with a chair and then lines up Swerve with a spirit gun. And the visual here, this guy's in like his little office shirt, and he's got blood all over the white shirt, all over his forehead, and he just calmly beats the hell out of this guy until finally the Undisputed Kingdom run down. And then the exclamation point at the end of this segment is that off camera you can hear a fan scream, "This is a travesty!" And that's how this ended. But then Ricochet grabbed the microphone and he said, "Zack Sabre Jr., Tokyo Dome main event."
I forgot about that. Dang.
Yeah. Dude, I will say, I think I was completely justified in my harboring of this awful Ricochet direction, because they couldn't have dropped it more cold than here. And if they have made this guy into a stone cold killer who's going to just go around stabbing people with these golden scissors.
Well, listen, John, the man's been through a lot, okay? He was embarrassed by Bobby Lashley in the Hurt Business. He had toilet paper thrown on him, okay?
This was the breaking point. I'm all for this toilet paper angle now that I despised on Saturday.
You don't just go and grab scissors because you lost the C2, okay? You have to suffer all of these injustices to get this fully evolved version of TREVOR, okay? And that's what he should be called from now on. Forget Ricochet. This is TREVOR.
Terrible
I love
TREVOR.
this. I love this. I love the look, okay? Coming out with these glasses, baby blue suit, and a golden pair of scissors. Which
This is like a serial killer on like a Netflix crime drama.
This is exactly it. Yeah, it's a guy who's had enough of his desk job and passed on for a promotion and is choosing to do something awful about it. People mentioning, of course, the golden scissors are from Jordan Peele's movie Us, so I'm sure there's some inspiration from that. But just awesome. Okay, no comedy here. Not even a smile from Ricochet. He's just stabbing a dude with a pair of scissors, and he just stares motionless for so much of it. I think this is great. This is the exact type of seriousness I think we've wanted out of Ricochet, and continues to like take this heel run to another notch.
And Ricochet is his house now on notice.
You should keep that address away.
Maybe they're gonna borrow from Kendrick and Drake, and we'll get like a Google Maps of like Ricochet's home.
God, I hope not. I mean, Samantha Irvin's there.
Well, I don't know. Something's got to be done here, and typically we go to the house after the blood is spilled.
Yes. We shall see. Listen, the precedent
This
has
really
been set.
re-engaged me in this program. And do you see this as a detour of Swerve from Lashley, or do you think that's going to be revisited in the next 6 months?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'd argue this is hotter now than, Swerve versus Lashley. So I have to think that they're continuing to linger.
It's AEW, so I imagine they'll get back to it, but it could be 2 years from now.
What about Ricochet and Lashley? Like, are we to just believe that was the end of?
Well,
of
these
their
men are going
interactions?
to bludgeon one another to death, and then they'll come together under mutual respect at the end to go after the greater evil.
Well, first, the Undisputed Kingdom are now a part of this. Okay,
That they were brought into this.
they're now
as
going to
well.
merge with the conglomeration, and they're going to merge with Swerve. The Nana, whatever Prince Nana's current thing is, we're just going to get a big.
Maybe
old
the
party.
knife pervert will get involved too.
Yeah, and then I guess the Acclaimed can't really scissor anymore because you can't have a group
Gone.
with scissor.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. This is a much better use of scissoring.
Marvez spoke with Lethal, Dutt, and Satnam Singh. They have not spoken to Jeff, who immediately walks it, like 10 seconds later, he walks into the shot. And he's still looking for Karen, and they ask him about his announcement tonight. Are you sure? Whatever you have to say, we'll support you. And then Karen comes in and talks about this business is nearly broken, Jeff, and you do whatever you need to. We are unbreakable. And hands Jeff his boots. Just from the tone of this, I already knew that, like where this segment was going, but I was curious to see how we got there. I had absolutely no doubt that this man was not retiring after this segment. With all due respect to Satnam Singh looking so somber in the background. Mariah May did a promo. She was told not to say anything bad about the women's division. She had more matches than any other woman in AEW last year. I don't have epics because I am epic, and the division is going to have to prove themselves to get another shot at her. So Jarrett comes out, and he wishes everyone a slappy new year. And he talks about all the things he has to be thankful for, the history of his family in this business going back to 1946, his dad as a wrestler, then a promoter for 40 years, him debuting in 1986, and through all these generations of Jarretts, they made high-risk decisions that came with high rewards. Also mentioning the launch of his own wrestling company in 2002 that has gone on to produce some of the best wrestlers of all time. And the crowd is chanting no when he asks if he should ride off into the sunset. And he says the answer to that is hell no. And he announced that he has signed his last talent contract. He has re-signed with AEW. He wants one more ride, and he wants AEW gold. But I'm not going for those mid-card trios belts. I'm entering the gauntlet next week, and my New Year's resolution is to become the AEW World Champion. So let's just book it now. This guy's going into the Owen Hart Cup. That's got to be the story for right. Jarrett this year, is to go into the Owen Hart Cup, and I think he should go to the finals.
I think he should main event.
Wembley, or sorry, I guess it'll be not Wembley.
All in.
Well, I guess
I'm joking. He should not main event. I think that's a terrible idea.
Are you kidding? Did you hear how many people were booking that to happen last spring? I think he should go to the finals and lose. That would be my pick.
That's perfect. That's perfectly fine. But
I think you could build up a really captivating final with Jeff Jarrett losing to the right heel, or even babyface for that matter.
I think you could book up to a nice title challenge, maybe for his retirement match. But then again, there is no retirement match at the end of this because this is a new contract. We have no length of contract.
We didn't get a length of contract.
I'm presuming
it's a 5-year deal with an option.
That's what I'm assuming actually, John. Aren't standard contracts in AEW 3 to 5 years or something like that?
Well, we're playing the long game with Double J.
Okay, so I don't know how you feel about this. I haven't spoken to you about it yet, but I said on Saturday, I don't think a babyface can tease a retirement this hard and then not deliver without feeling like the boy who cried wolf. And that's exactly the feeling I had coming out of this. I think instead of this segment feeling like it's some sort of celebratory announcement of him not retiring, it instead felt like a poorly delivered manipulation of the audience's emotions. Why did he take the boots from Karen to bring to the outside, for the tease?
Why would he put his friends and wife through that for the last couple of days?
Why would you do that? It's
could you imagine if I just, on Saturday night when we finished the show, I said, guys, I'm going to have to get really serious. I'm going to have to make a career impactful decision on Wednesday. Yeah. And then I just ignored you since Saturday. And then I come on here and you're thinking I'm going to be done. You've already enlisted a new co-host. And then I'm just joking.
I think it'd be a totally dick move,
Yeah.
And it's not even like his career was threatened prior to this. He was just an active wrestler. I guess we're behind the scenes his contract was up, but it wasn't like it was so threatened that it warranted this sort of even tease of retirement. He just decided on his own idea to tease a big announcement, only to announce that, hey, I'm going to be here for basically, another 3 to 5 years. It should have been another babyface or heel that prompted him instead to stick around.
This was definitely done just to pop a number on the show with a tease of an announcement.
And audiences can see through that these days.
It is, but the hope will be that the audience will want to see this eventually culminate with him challenging for the title at some point this year.
That's fine.
It is going to build to something. It's not just done with no benefit.
But you could have got there without this roller coaster that he was trying to set up. Listen, the other thing is, I don't necessarily know if the tease of Jarrett going for a championship is the sort of babyface moment that I think certain people think it might be. Like him going for the Owen is different because there's sentimentality attached to it. But I don't know if people are so excited about Jeff Jarrett being a world champion. Okay, people are already complaining about Adam Copeland being in this Mox title match. I don't think the picture of Jeff Jarrett holding the world championship, John Moxley's title, maybe he's the guy who beats Moxley.
No, what I want this year is Darby Allin versus Jeff Jarrett for that title. Tell me that's not a Dynamite main event.
Sure.
I'm not saying I want a pay-per-view cycle building to this, but for a Wednesday on Dynamite, I want Jeff Jarrett to work a Darby Allin match.
They can tell a great Jeff Jarrett going for the championship story eventually, but I also don't think audiences actually want that. I don't think the audiences actually want Jeff Jarrett with the championship. Like, be more realistic, dude. Like, go for the TNT, the Continental. Like, realistically, he should be going for the ROH Television Championship. Okay, that's kind of like more so what his WrestleMania moment should be. But I don't know. Like, I wasn't necessarily like, yes, I can't wait. Go Jeff, you go get it. I want you to be world champion at All In.
Man, you're gonna upset some people tonight, Way. I think. I did think Jeff was very good in this segment. Just in terms of the delivery itself.
I'm sorry I didn't. Just
okay, that's fine.
Maybe it's just because of like what the nature of this was, but I came out of this feeling like this was a guy that just like built me up for nothing.
What if we got the after the break and he walks to the back, and Karen just looks and slaps him and walks out with Lethal, Singh, and Dutt.
Yeah, you just high-fiving him after this,
I'd be furious. I'd be furious if I was one of his friends. Yeah. The Patriarchy and Hook recap. Hook does an interview. He's coming for Christian, and he's going to finish what the turtleneck started and choke his ass out. And the match is happening in 2 weeks in Cincinnati on Maximum Carnage.
Mm-hmm.
Not minimum, Maximum Carnage.
Yeah, they got the trademark from Marvel for it. I don't know. Maybe they could benefit from that SEO.
Powerhouse Hobbs, who is in the gauntlet next week, murdered John Serpentico Cruz and Rob Killjoy in a minute 13 with a spine buster to Cruz on top of Killjoy. Just a win for Hobbs coming off his loss to Konosuke Takeshita on the weekend. Marvez just interviews Big Bill and Brian Keith, and he asks, where's Chris Jericho? They explain he's not coming here. And they call over to Rated FTR, who are 10 feet away from them, and they insult Asheville. So Copeland rebuts by calling Brian Keith a tumbleweed, and Cass has a stupid face, and challenges them to a 6-man on Collision. So we will get the Learning Tree and Rated FTR and Jericho and Adam Copeland in a ring together on Saturday.
I mean, I think that's pretty interesting. It's something we certainly haven't seen in quite some time. Certainly not
since Edge's comeback have those two been in a match together.
Yeah, actually feels quite big. Like bigger than I think a last minute type of build for Collision. But they're going ahead with Rated FTR as like this thing and as a way to reintroduce Copeland back into the system. I think it's actually perfect.
MJF promo from after
Sweet Daddy Siki graphic. Did you notice?
Oh, I missed it here. I saw online both WWE and AEW put up tributes for Sweet Daddy Siki, but that's cool that they got it on the broadcast here. Mm-hmm. MJF did a promo after World's End, and he said it took an army to beat him up, but finally this chapter with Adam Cole is over mercifully, I'll say. And it's time for retribution for the title I never lost, and is being paraded around in a briefcase. And he refers to Dictator John, the moniker he used on Moxley some 4 or 5 years ago, and asks, what's a king to a god? And you can burn this company to the ground for all I care. All I want is my title back. And in 2025, the devil gets his due, part 2, as he made the devil horn sign.
Yeah, good promo from MJF. I mean, it's I think about the standard that we've expected from him, but maybe it doesn't really have that oomph to it because he's coming off of a really weak feud, and arguably the weakest year he's had since he started here in AEW, and we'll see if a Moxley feud can really reinvigorate him. I'm interested to see what the babyface heel dynamics would be, if at all, for a feud like that.
Collision on Saturday. We mentioned the six-man, also Private Party defending against Action Andretti and Leo Rush for the tag titles, and Daniel Garcia and Mark Briscoe for the TNT title, which takes us to the main event with Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, and Wheeler Yuta against FTR and just Cope.
Cope, yes.
Cope.
I mean, I'm guessing like they felt
Adam Copeland was too much of a mouthful,
or just like maybe not as cool, like not as much of a character. Like Adam Copeland sounds like a school teacher and not so much like a I don't know, like a rated R superstar.
What I love about this is that over the span of his career, he has noted many times that if he could do a redo, he wouldn't have gone with the name Edge because it was a single syllable name that was very hard to chant. So he has now gone with the multi-syllable Cope.
Cope.
Yes.
Cope.
Maybe he came up with all these puns, like from the education and educator. We're going to get like the coping mechanism and...
Don't we already have one? Okay, we have the Grindhouse, which is a great name for submission that has no pun attached to it at all.
No, he seems to be a pun supporter.
Yeah.
The rated R superstar Cope.
Yes.
Cope.
You really don't like this. I trust
Hard to cope.
I trust you'll get used to it by week 3.
Cope. Daniel Wheeler was also wearing an armband with the initials DRW. So I imagine this is someone in his immediate family. He had mentioned at the press conference of a family member going through something. So they didn't disclose who this was in reference to, but there was he did look into the camera afterwards holding up the armband as well. So it was worth noting that. They got the heat on Cope until the big tag was made. It's going to take me a little bit. I'll try to put less emphasis on it, but I've got to ease into it. Cash gets the big tag, and then later Dax is in with a brainbuster to Yuta. And good action here. Moxley snaps Dax's neck onto the top rope, and then Yuta hits a splash for a 2 count. Shafir takes a cheap shot at Dax from the floor, and they keep the advantage going through the break, and then they build up to Cope and Moxley being tagged in, and the crowd is really amped up for this. So this would be a positive signal for the program with these two. We should also say when Rated FTR came out, obviously this is Asheville, this place went nuts for them. Like these 3,300 sounded like 10,000 when they came out, and they were here for these three in this match. So Cope and Moxley go into the audience. Eventually they'd return, and Yuta ran at Copeland and was caught with a Liger bomb. Moxley then takes Copeland and they yank his groin into the post. Cash goes for his tope suicida, and he's going at lightning speed like usual, but this time it's cut off by a perfectly timed Castagnoli uppercut. They go to clear the desk, and then Jay White shows up, hits the Blade Runner onto Yuta as Claudio chases him away. Cope backdrops Moxley onto the desk, and then great camera miss here as Copeland dives off the desk, putting Moxley through the barricade, but they did show a replay of it. And Claudio runs at Cope, hits him with a European uppercut, but FTR return with the Shatter Machine. Copeland recovers and pins Yuta after a spear in 18 minutes and 38 seconds. I thought maybe they would do the more gutsy finish and have Moxley take a pin here, but Yuta was the sacrificial lamb. But nonetheless, Rated FTR win.
I think like Yuta taking the pin probably still enough to justify a title match at this point.
It's fine.
Honestly, you don't really need anything to justify title matches anymore. It's a new year. Are the records even? Do they even count that? Yearly records?
I don't know, but Hobbs had some insane record of like 84-20 or something like that. So it's just lifetime records.
I think we only deal with all-time records at this point now with AEW. But I thought a very good main event. Puts a lot of steam behind Rated FTR as a babyface threat that doesn't just equalize the Death Riders, but is capable of beating them. I think Copeland in his return match, like for him, first match. Sorry, Cope. Cope in his comeback match. I guess his debut match. Because the person before was not. Cope.
Yeah, is he 1-0 now?
Yeah,
As Cope?
yeah. Changing your name or shaving your head.
It's like changing your Twitter handle. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I thought he looked very good. A trio setting obviously helps. With cardio, but it didn't seem like he was losing a step at any point. I actually considered both in ring and like in that little backstage interaction with the learning tree. I thought Cope was one of the highlights of the show.
Yeah, I would say the opener and the main event were very strong matches. I didn't think any of the matches in between really came anywhere close, but those two matches, I mean, that alone was over 30 minutes that you did have, and I think that was certainly a strength on the show. And there you go. I'd be very curious if, obviously we did the show immediately afterward, if they got, like, typically they'll have the baby faces like send everyone home afterward. I'm curious if like Copeland would talk about Siki or something, and you have, being in Asheville, and nonetheless, because Copeland was someone that was, he had Siki there that time we went to that Edge Appreciation Night where they did bring out Siki for that.
Where he did not want to talk to Ron Hutchison.
Yes. Yeah. So the story was from that night that Hutchison, who had not gotten any kind of explanation from Siki, walked up to him, and Siki just put up his hand and just walked away. So it was a mystery. Yes.
Yeah. I'm also curious, like, what they do with the time without Rampage now. Like, are we just getting dark matches? Are they taping for Ring of Honor or something? So I'm sure we'll find out probably already if you go search online. So yeah, as a new show, or at least a season premiere of sorts on Max, I thought this was a good show. It wasn't one of the sort of like great, home run types of dynamites that I think we've had in the past, at least as it comes to like having like a really standout in-ring match. But I thought it was an overall good show. Hayter and Hart maybe a bit of a disappointment. MJF and Cole seem to be in course correction mode moving into their next programs. I loved the TREVOR scissor attack. That was one of my favorite things about the whole show. Good video packages, I thought, throughout the show for Mone, Ospreay, and a Jeff Jarrett announcement that I didn't personally like very much, but maybe others did.
Are you starting a new list for 2025? And is anything from tonight going on it?
I don't know if it's gotten to that part. I don't know if there's anything that was great yet this year.
One Day in, Kenta Keno is on my list.
And the Punk Rollins promo segment, actually.
Oh yeah, that was technically December 30th.
Oh, never mind.
So it missed out. Anyway. All right, let's we have a bunch of feedback here, so we might condense some of it, but we start off with
We actually have a lot of super chats here.
Oh my goodness.
And this is somewhat sentimental for us, because I don't think we'll be getting super chats once we move over behind the paywall for these live shows. So get your thank you guys for getting some of our last super chats, and your last opportunity will be on Monday when we do one of our original format shows for the last time on Rewind-A Raw. First of all, welcome Jacob as our new member on our YouTube page. Membership service, so you can get all of our exclusive shows as well on YouTube. It costs a little bit more, and that's because of the YouTube tax, but if you choose to get all of your content through YouTube's platform, you can do that at youtube.com/postwrestling on desktop. So thank you for that. We got a Karthik who sends 100 rupees to ask, what relationship did you guys have with Black and Gold NXT? When did you get into it and begin to lose interest? Do you care for the current iteration?
I mean, I watched the entire run during that era. I mean, it was when it was in that 1 hour format, I thought that was just like an excellent 60 minutes of television every week. The takeovers were pretty much can't miss shows, and they were outstanding. I think really the appeal of the brand, certainly all of it took form with the launch of the WWE Network, and by the time they ran that first Barclay show in 2015, I think that's when it was starting to really ascend popularity-wise, and then with the talent that they were adding in 15 and 16 and 17, like those to me were just pretty solid years, where it was a lot of like simple booking, and it built up to like the 5-match structure that now we're seeing utilized on the main roster. And I think people are realizing that that's a great format, and worked exceptionally well in the takeover days, where it was a 2 to 2.5 hour major show that they built to like every 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, I think in retrospect, watching it now, I mean, I think historically it'll prove as a great sort of indicator of Levesque's taste in how he currently books modern day WWE. You know, championships that I think are strong, shows that are relatively short, and good emphasis, I think, on both in ring as well as like storyline. Especially in that period, it was really the alternative that was available. I mean, there was New Japan, and then there was NXT, and NXT taking a huge chunk out of Ring of Honor as, you know, one of your alternative options if you're into strong in-ring quality, and like just essentially a good TV product that people certainly weren't getting on the main roster. So as AEW became more of a thing, certainly like we don't really have to revisit the Wednesday Night Wars, but that probably took a huge chunk out of, you know, NXT's momentum. And
I mean, it killed that version of the brand, and that, you know, begat the 2.0 era, and then kind of what we're at now, which, I mean, ultimately, I think NXT has really found its footing now in this like current scenario. It's very different from the black and gold era.
It's different from 2.0.
It's different from 2.0 as well. Like there's it almost is like there are elements of those in the current brand. But
it's serving its purpose in a way that black and gold wasn't really. Like black and gold,
and it is streamlined. Like for all the talk of like it was this alternative, I was like, this is supposed to be your feeder system to the main roster. And when they were so diametrically different, like you'd see where a lot of performers would go to the main roster and it was like they were lost or just not understood of how to be handled. And you just had totally different systems that,
or they wouldn't go to the main roster at all. Like,
yeah,
you know, unless it was like by, I don't know, by force. And then, yeah, like it was not living up to its purpose as a feeder system, which modern day WWE, NXT, I believe is. Thank you very much for that super chat, Karthik. Let's go to Christopher O'Donnell, who sends $5 to say, patron since day one. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Also, sadly, entrance music is dubbed over on Max for AEW. Just heard the worst cover of Super Kick Party ever. Wow, I didn't consider that. Man, wow. That's a nightmare, actually.
Yeah, like I would imagine if that's the case for the Young Bucks, then, I mean, I would imagine that Judas is probably...
How would they not own... Super Kick Party? Like it's not like it's an, you know, like Elton John or I don't know, like did they just not have the rights to it?
I don't know what the answer. That's a surprising one. I wouldn't think that would be a song that would be a victim of that, but I mean that's yeah, I mean we have seen that in the past, and AEW has leaned into a lot of commercial music, but a lot of the times we've noted how
they have the deals.
Tony Khan has noted that they've gotten the deals like in perpetuity, like when for the Brody Lee tribute episode, which I guess that's not up yet because that would have been December 2020, but anyway.
Thank you for that note, Chris. Let's go to Jake from the Windy City, who sends $5 to say, Happy New Year, guys. This is not a category anymore, but who would be your best announcer in 2024? My pick would be Nigel, but Cole deserves his flowers too. Interesting. Best announcer. So this to me is almost always a little bit tough because I think the role of a color commentator is so different from the role of a play-by-play guy. We almost like you could say like you need separate categories for the both of them. But let's at the very least say who's in contention. Okay.
I mean, ones that come to mind, certainly for color, I think Nigel is excellent in that role. I'll say for play-by-play, and I watched like enough of the Stardom show to really sense like Walker Stewart knew that product inside and out. Like that guy is like, I don't know Walker Stewart, but it is very clear just how much research he does, knowing the histories of all these performers, what their move sets, what the moves are called. And this is him, like, it's one thing like New Japan, like that's his bread and butter that he's calling so often. But this Stardom show, I mean, he was a great asset on that broadcast. And you can just tell that he puts a lot of hours into just having that familiarity, and it does not sound as though he is just relying on notes. It's just instinctual.
Yeah, for me, I think I'd probably go Nigel. On the play-by-play side, I don't necessarily think I think Cole is very good. Yeah, like I probably still ingrained in me to not necessarily think of him as like the best, but of the options, certainly in the WWE, and especially like when taking into consideration all he does beyond just like the on-air product, but like the production that he does. I'd probably choose him then.
Rick Abani and Caprice Coleman might be my favorite team. Like just two guys that work off each other so seamlessly well. Like they just come across as like great friends, and it's a really fun chemistry that the two have that I think is works for commentary duos like that. So anyway, those are some ideas.
Let's go to feedback from forum.postwrestling.com, where all Post Wrestling Patreon patrons have access to leave your feedback for every one of our shows.
Gary from Texas writes, a good show of Dynamite tonight. I watched on Max and just want to add that I had no streaming issues. There are commercials, but had no problems fast forwarding. It will definitely be a lot easier to watch AEW for me now. Highlights were Hangman versus Cassidy. I love seeing Cassidy use his characteristic mannerisms in a smart way to avoid Hangman's offense. And MJF's promo. His promo video was heads and shoulders above every other speaking segment on the show. I loved hearing him focus on the championship. Mox and MJF could reignite a lot of interest in the title picture.
All right, let's go up next to Saeed from Vancouver. Fun six-man tag tonight to end the night. Really hope Rated FTR don't get sucked into the Jericho vortex after that backstage segment. I enjoyed Hayter versus Hart, but I was not the biggest fan of the ending. This feud goes on. Really interested to see where Ricochet takes his heel character. Going to be a violent feud with Swerve. We are stacking the opponents for Mox, and I love it. Happy New Year's to the Post Wrestling family.
Next, we go to Andrew from Cape Breton. A great show tonight. The whole episode seemed to have one unifying theme, that being fighting for the world title. Everyone's focused on that, which was great. Hobbs had a rehab match from his loss, and MJF had a rehab promo from his loss. Well, I mean, he actually won. Not the match, just the whole feud. Okay, he did clarify. I thought MJF really showed why he's one of the best performers in that whole company. I also thought Ricochet was excellent in his attack on Swerve and feels like a completely different person from his WWE run. The only negatives for me were the women's match, which was below the standard for what the matches should be on the show, and the new song. I may be excited, but I'm also so scared. On the plus side, if there's any pro wrestling television show that's on speed, it's Dynamite, and that's why I like it.
All right, let's go up next to Cody from Maine. Happy New Year to you both and the entire Post community. Great show tonight, although not perfect, as I could go without the Pointer Sisters intro or Cope. Wow, two anti-Pointer Sisters comments back to back. Although I'm sure I'll get used to both. At least the latter was a part of a feel-good ending to the show that the crowd was super into. Hangman Orange and Hart Hayter were both good, but I feel like they served as an appetizer for what each combo could do in a pay-per-view setting. Speaking about Ricochet, they deserved the well-deserved concern for him after being punked out by the Hurt Syndicate a few weeks ago seems like a distant memory. It gives me a glimmer of hope that the Undisputed Kingdom may not come off as geeks in the long term, but only a glimmer. Well, for them, I'm more concerned about them because they're baby faces, and I think it's a lot more difficult to, you can't use scissors, as a baby face, right? But we'll see. They're probably going to turn heel, I think, sooner than later.
Sal from California. Ricochet stabbing Swerve tonight was brutal and gave a much-needed edge to his new dorky character. When Urkel created Cool Juice, he became Stefan. When Ricochet finds a pair of golden scissors, he becomes Sicko-Shay.
Oh, Sicko-Shay. Okay, I like it. I've also heard Pricochet, which I think is awesome as well.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Lewis from Long Beach. All I could think of while watching the Ricochet angle was one, I feel like Wai. Kind of called this in part during the last review, indicating that Ricochet's success as a heel would depend on him ramping up intensity and aggression, which this clearly was. And two, this is an example of letting things play out where something actually happened. They've elevated Ricochet to be...
it's cutting something off after 10 days that was universally panned by most. And going in such a 180 from where things went.
Conflicted by this feedback because he did put me over early on. But I do kind of disagree with number two in that, I think you could have gotten here without the first part of it. I really don't think you needed that Hurt Syndicate stuff in order to get us to this area. Now, did the Hurt Syndicate scene end up helping him in getting everybody to talk about it? I tend to think that there were other ways that they could have, other things they could have done to get people talking about Ricochet that would have led to this and delivered the same result without some of the negativity that I think some people would have just dismissed the show earlier. But anyway, we're here, and that's really all that matters. They've elevated Ricochet to be a potentially top-level heel over the course of a few months. While I'm unsure whether the Hurt Syndicate angle was necessary for him to get there, okay, there you go. I do think the overarching storyline of him being disrespected and being taken lightly by people like Swerve and the Syndicate ultimately made tonight feel like a well-earned escalation of intensity from him. Really interested to see where he goes from here.
Ben from Vancouver, very solid show. Ricochet's violent angle and MJF's promo were the standout segments. The three-way worked really well, and they went at such a fast pace. Not sure I would have had Julia Hart return in a match where her opponent barely sold. Made her look weak. Main event was fun, but Yuta doesn't belong in the main event. He brings the Death Riders down because he just doesn't look impressive or threatening. Which show do you think does better numbers in Canada? Impact on Sportsnet 360 or Collision on the USA Network? Yes, we've got the Canadian numbers wars. I have no idea. I have no idea what's going to perform better. I mean, Sportsnet 360 is in theory a more well-known station, but it's the lesser-known product. I would say overall than Collision. I just don't know what this USA Network is going to generate, and by and large, Canadian numbers can fluctuate a lot. There's just especially when you're talking like a smaller sample size. But we'll see, because that Impact debut on Sportsnet 360 is tomorrow, and then Collision begins on Saturday on the USA Network. So hopefully we will have numbers for those.
Let's go to our last piece of feedback of the night. Let's go to Jordan from the Bronx, who says, a very fun show. Watching on Max on my PS5 felt so much better than the Triller VPN Chromecast combo that I used to have to do. While I will miss the lack of commercials, I appreciate the convenience and reliability that Max offers. Dork-ass Trevor was bullied to his breaking point and snapped on Swerve. With his heel turn fully realized, I'm excited to see what this version of Ricochet can become. I'm curious to see if he changes up his style to match this new flip towards darkness. I shudder to think what kind of violence that he and Swerve can inflict on the other. Cope is just a bad name, which is funny considering that his name used to be Edge. And I think we'll probably get used to it too. Question. Triller is offering Wrestle Kingdom and Wrestle Dynasty on a deal for $50. Is Wrestle Kingdom going to be an additional cost on New Japan World, or is it included in the subscription?
My understanding, it's part of the subscription. I think that comes with your New Japan World subscription. So, yes.
So what would motivate somebody to pay $50 for it?
I can't answer that. I mean, it's. This has been the case for other pay-per-views too, where and I think you get English and Japanese commentary on New Japan World, so it's not even a case of like sometimes they've separated it where Japanese commentary is on the World sub and then English commentary has been elsewhere, but I don't think that's the case.
Some people probably just don't want to navigate New Japan World, you know.
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like if you get a handful of orders of those people, it's at that price point, it makes it worth it for them. So I can't get into the dynamics, but it is a better deal probably to get your New Japan World subscription. But that is coming up this weekend. We'll
have coverage all weekend long.
Yeah, we'll go through just, again, what's coming up. On Thursday, we'll drop a primer from Bruce Lord and Karen Peterson previewing both shows at Tokyo Dome. Friday night, Wai Ting and I are back to talk 3 hours of SmackDown. And then on Saturday, Wrestle Kingdom 19, we'll have a show from Bruce and Karen on the free feed. Wai and I are going to do about 30 minutes recapping the major thoughts and stories coming out of the show.
We're going to try to do 30 minutes.
I'm not going more than 30. We're going to keep it condensed because then we have to come back on Sunday with a more thorough review of Wrestle Dynasty. And we will talk about all those go-home segments from tonight's Dynamite that led to Wrestle Dynasty.
You got at least
Will
one.
Ricochet be IWGP World Champion by the end of the weekend?
Will Ricochet be able to bring his scissors on a plane to Japan?
Oh, great question. Yeah, I think you picked those up in Japan. I'm sure that any big Japan connoisseur can help you get some blades.
Yeah. All right.
So all of that can be found at postwrestling.com. We thank all of you for joining us, and that is it for us because now we have to rest up for SmackDown on Friday night. Goodbye.
All right, cool.
Do you know ahead of time?
Oh, wait. Sorry about that.
No,